What happened there, loser?
What happened there? The Miata's a better car. So this one was here, right?
Oh, this is where all the copper came from. That's a bad one.
Alright guys, welcome to another video from XF Motorsports. Today we have an S2000 in the shop, which unfortunately belongs to, well, the biggest racer in the world. This is my friend.
Can we not do that first?
He's a previous Miata owner, but then he finally decided to upgrade from a Miata to an S2000 and, well...
Biggest mistake ever.
Not the biggest mistake, but he managed to blow it in like literally a day of owning it. So, well, I'll let him tell you the story of how he bought the car and where
so
we're at.
after owning 3 Miatas, I finally decided it's time for something different. So I bought this 2001 S2000 from the US. I flew down there, drove it back, 800 kilometer drive, 500 roughly miles.
The first time he drives it over here, another Miata person showed up, like a person who I made fun of his previous car in a previous video, but then he was back for redemption. He bought his new Miata and he was there to prove that Miatas are still faster than S2000s, and well, to my surprise, the new Miata, his ND Miata, actually beat this S2000 in a drag race. Not just once, many times actually.
This car runs pretty well. I'm surprised.
And I lost a bet and I had to get these guys dinner and, well...
But that's not all. The S2000 also lost to a new Civic with the turbo.
Yeah, a regular...
Stock turbo Civic.
So here's the thing, first he loses to a Miata, then literally a Civic Racer shows up in his perfectly stock 1.5 liter Civic, and he beats an S2000. At that point I was like, no, there's definitely something wrong with this car. It can't be losing to a Civic, that's like just not possible. And sure enough, soon after, like after 1 or 2 drag races or whatever, the engine, well, pretty much blew. It stopped working, it started sounding like a diesel, and sure enough we took a few things apart and it was all filled with copper, basically bearings that in the bottom end are probably all rusted. So, well, getting to where we are at now, we have to, well, start taking this engine apart, seeing what's wrong with it and how someone managed to actually blow an S2000 up in one day literally, and then making a plan from there and starting to fix this engine. So starting off by showing you guys the S2000. So it's an AP1 2001 S2000, pretty clean actually. The bodywork and everything is in fairly good shape. I think it has what?
It's an S2000 with a clean title.
What's the mileage on it? 170,000
175,000 kilometers,
so,
roughly 110,000 miles.
Yeah, not even driven that much, but the question is, how the hell did it blow up like that quickly and like not even like driving that hard or anything? So that's the thing we're going to be looking into. At this point we pretty much have to tear the engine apart entirely, because if the bottom end is done, that of course means, yeah, taking the bottom end, like having a look at the bearings first of course, but then measuring the clearances. The compression is also low on it, by the way. We're only getting like 160 compression, 160 psi. I think it's supposed to be 210 on these engines, so that's also another problem. But yeah, I think at this point we might pretty much be looking at an engine rebuild. So in this video, let's actually start by tearing everything apart, seeing what we actually find out inside it, and then after that, well, I'm trying to convince him to go with that turbo. Like, when the whole thing is apart, why not put stronger internals in it and like do the proper thing, make more power with it. But since he's the type of person who's used to driving Miatas, so that's the, yeah, well, that's
the actual reason for not going for higher power is I want to enjoy it as a stock power for long, you know. First see what that is about, then in the future maybe think about a turbo or a supercharger.
No dude, if you have an S2000 and if you're rebuilding the engine, you don't rebuild it with stock internals. That's just something you don't do. So yeah, let's get to actually tearing it apart and see how things go from there.
So progress for today, we have the head off, and it's a really cool head, but it's super dirty right now. Definitely, it seems like the engine was run on really bad oil at some point at least. Right now the oil was not too bad, but clearly there's so much junk in there that it's pretty bad. These ones have, well, it's a VTEC head, that's why it has a third spring over here. It also has 3 cams. 2 cams are the regular ones that open the intake and exhaust valves at low RPM, and then there's a lockup pin that locks the third cam with the other 2, so then when the engine hits its VTEC mode, which is above 5,000 or 6,000 RPM, I'm not sure where, that's when the intake valves and exhaust valves start opening fully to their full lift, and it's a completely different cam profile basically that is meant for high RPM, and then the engine really comes alive and makes its proper power. So it's a pretty cool design that I guess I'll show you more when we start putting things back together. But here's a look at the engine block right now. The reason we decided to, of course, do things this way is that now it's going to be really easy to take the engine and transmission out in one piece. They say if you don't remove the head hits the back of this thing, the engine hits the front of that, and that's why you can't take it out like that, and you have to remove the subframe. But since we're lazy and we didn't want to do things the harder way, we're just going to do it this way. It seems easy enough doing it this way. Well, it took us no time at all getting this far with it at least. Yeah, here's the block design. Open deck block, but crazy how thick these walls are. They made them really thick, I guess because of the high compression. 11 to 5 compression on this engine. But I think let's actually, well, tomorrow take the engine out entirely and look at the bottom end, because that's where most of the trouble is anyways, and then we'll really get to see what condition this engine is in and what we have to do to get it running again. So after a little bit of effort, we were able to take the F20 engine out of the S2000, and yeah, here's a look at the little engine. The clutch on it is definitely not factory. This is a, well, pretty aggressive pressure plate on it, and the clutch also did feel like it was a pretty aggressive clutch. So yeah, that's something that, well, I guess we should change the clutch master for this one, because the stock master does not work too well with this one. The biting point is literally like a tiny thing at the end of the travel. So yeah, other than that, well, we still got to take the engine apart more to find out what caused it to blow, because I'm pretty sure the problem is in the bottom end, judging by how much copper we saw. So yeah, let's next get the clutch off, put it on an engine stand, and actually before that I want to weigh this engine, because of all the debate, every single time I mention that car, the E55 ASL and the V8 engine, every K24 guy has to mention, oh, K24 is so much lighter, why didn't you put that in? And every single K24 I've seen actually is not that much lighter than a V8. So let's actually weigh this one, because this is pretty similar to a K24, and actually see if it's any lighter than a Mercedes V8 or not. So after putting everything that we've removed from the engine, well, not even everything right now, because the cams, half the rockers, all the VTEC system, it's all missing right now. And the engine still weighs 131.5 kilograms. The Mercedes V8 weighs 180 kilograms. This is literally just barely 40 kilograms lighter than that for half the power. So power to weight ratio wise, it's way lower than a Mercedes V8.
It's a $3 German engineered AMG O-ring that fucks up the whole engine.
Okay, at least it doesn't blow up the first time you buy an S2000, the first day. So there was definitely no end to that discussion, but talking about a decision that is more obvious than that, it is to invest in a good diagnostics tool. So, well, Launch sent me their newest scanner, so you can actually know next time what's wrong with your engine before you blow it up and then start rebuilding it again. For testing out the Launch code reader, let's actually do it on my, well, indefinitely broken Mercedes R-Class, because this is probably going to be the biggest challenge even this code reader has ever seen. Well, sure enough, since it's an R-Class, right now there is a check engine light on it, so let's see if the scanner is going to be able to tell me what's wrong with the car and how to fix it. So this scanner actually scans the transmission control module, the engine control, ESP, SRS, and a few other things on your car, which is pretty useful to have. and then after that it prints a full report and basically tells you everything that is well, wrong with your car. You can also email yourself this report, and these are the two codes stored in mine. They're stored in the ECU. What's even cooler is that if for some reason you want to diagnose something that the well, there's no code for it, and if there's something that the code scanner isn't catching, you can actually go on read data stream, and you can actually read all the various different sensors on your engine. Let's say fuel tank level. You just press OK, and then it will actually display all the live readings from these sensors on your car. So I have 15 liters of fuel right now. What's even cooler is that you can actually graph these values too. So if you're looking for some intermittent thing, like let's say a sensor only fails in a certain condition, you can actually graph the value from that, and you will actually like see the value changing as you're driving your car. So yeah, it's a pretty cool scanner. Definitely a must-have if you have a car like this that gives you a lot of trouble. The link for this one is going to be in the description below, so definitely go check it out. And for now, back to the Honda. That's what the Honda boy did. Okay, that's thanks. Which one is where? Yeah, braided. So here, this came off, put the cap back on, and then braid it. So after taking the whole engine apart, here's what we found out. This is where, this was the source of all the copper that you saw flying everywhere, the main bearings. They're pretty badly worn, and well, luckily, I have to give credit to the Honda boy this time. He did stop the car in time, because if he kept driving like this for a little bit longer, it would have pretty much been beyond repair. But at this point, I think it's within repair, within reasonable repair, I think, because the crank looks fairly okay. There's a few marks over here, but I'm pretty sure that when I polish it, I'll polish it and then see how much material is left on there when it all turns shiny and it's all the same color, and then measure all the bearing clearances, and if it's still within factory spec, then we should pretty much be able to just put new bearings and everything in there, put it all back together, and hopefully the engine should be good as new again. Question is, of course, why did the bearings go that bad that quickly? So hopefully when we measure the clearances, we'll find out if someone changed them and didn't put the right ones in there, or whether it was just a bit of hard driving from this guy that broke everything. So yeah, let's call it a day for today, but soon enough you guys will see a rebuild on this engine and putting it all back together and putting it in that car. Well, if you want to see this engine turbocharged, everyone say in the comment section you want to see this car get turboed, because that's what I want to do with it. But since he thinks it's a lot of power for him to handle, he doesn't want to go turbo right now. And yeah, let's see which way it goes. So that's going to be everything for the S2000 for this video. And well, I have actually already taken the time to measure the clearances and polish up the crankshaft to find out how much we need to do on this engine to bring it back to factory spec. And well, the good news is, after giving the crankshaft quite a bit of polishing, all those marks of the bearings have gone away from the journals, and taking measurements, the journal is still a perfect round and everything, so that's really good. I don't know if when we get the new bearings whether everything is going to be within factory spec, but even if it's not, this engine, well, just like most other new engines, does have a color coding system for the bearings where you can order bearings of different thicknesses. So even if things don't line up perfectly within factory spec, we can actually order different bearings and still make it meet factory specifications. The bad news though is that the cylinders also are, well, pretty far off from the factory spec. They have opened up quite a bit. Cylinder 1 was the worst one. It has opened up by 6.5. Well, this is thousandths of an inch right now. I didn't convert it to millimeters. Well, actually the conversion is right here. 7/1000 is 0.15 millimeters. So this one has pretty much opened up by 0.15 millimeters, which is a massive amount, by the way. And then 2 and 3 have opened up by 5.5, and then 4 is the best one. It's only 3.5. And the funny thing is, when we did the compression test, we saw the same things. Number 1 had the lowest compression. It was only at 150 psi or something. These two were at 160 psi, and this one was at 200 something psi. So number 4 is the only good cylinder right now. All the other ones have pretty much ovaled out. They have pretty much, opened up this way much more than they have opened up this way. And that's why, the piston to wall clearances are not even within the factory spec. And to bring them back to factory spec, now we need to do a little bit of machining on this block. We need to, bore it out a little bigger so we can put one size oversized pistons in it, bring the piston to wall clearance back to factory spec. We are going to be doing all the machining in-house on this one, and by the looks of it, this one, it does seem like an engine that someone has already worked on. You can kind of see those sandpaper marks on this head, which I'm pretty sure are not from the factory. So yeah, I'm not sure if what someone did on this engine before and why they took the head off and what they did to it. But once we get the new parts, once we do some machining on it, I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to bring it back to factory spec and make this engine pretty much new again. Other than that, this is another engine that, well, also needs some machining. It's an engine from a C63, and the cylinder walls on it are gone completely, actually. So this one also needs machining and resleeving. I'll probably do a video on this one. We didn't do a video on the teardown for this one because we were in a bit of a rush, but for the machining and for sleeving it and then putting it back together, I'll probably make a video on this one as well. This one is the M156. And other than that, well, the shop is definitely looking really messy right now with all these pile up of broken engines and blown parts. So that's why this week I just want to take some time to clear up the shop and get all these things out of the shop, because we'll have these parts. There's 3 Bentley engines over here and there's not even a single Bentley in the shop because, well, the car left for a body shop and the body shop is not even done with it. So that's why I just want to move all these parts to a storage for now, because, well, unfortunately the place is not called XF Free Storage or something, and we can't just keep all these customer parts over here. So yeah, that's going to be everything for now. Thanks for watching, and if you guys want to stay tuned with all these broken cars and blown engines and everything, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button, notification bell, and I will see you in the next one.